Hello. So, shoot. Hi. Okay. So, a different week this week. This is the one and only lecture, and it's not about any of our particular skills. Instead, I'm going to be presenting on the AP Literature Rubric. It's about time, I think, for me to explain clearly what AP Literature graders are specifically looking for, and then how that has shaped their goals for the course. And of course, how it inspires what I instruct as well. That said, there are just 2 assignments this week. One, to watch this video, which you're doing, congratulations, to read the models, and then to score yourself according to the rubric. So really getting into the nitty-gritty language of AP Literature. And then also, of course, to revise that essay. So they go hand in hand, revision, reflection. Reflection here, revision. There's not a new writing assignment this whole week. It is simply looking at what you have done and polishing it and making it even better. Okay, so this is a good sort of duality to reveal what I have done on the left here, or on the white part of the screen, and then what the AP Literature graders do on the right, on the red part of the screen. I'll look at the red. The AP Literature course is set out so that you would be evaluated at the end of it for your evidence and commentary on a particular argument, your sophistication in making that argument, and then your thesis statement, your ability to declare an argument. And so I took those things and I created our 3 triangle components of the course: creative analysis, which corresponds to evidence and commentary; grammar and craft, which corresponds to sophistication; and organization, which corresponds to the thesis statement and its line of reasoning. I just didn't want the whole course to be completely driven by the rubric, because there's so much more that we can do beyond just the rubric, but it does need to have a foothold in the course if what I'm instructing you on corresponds nicely and aligns with what the AP Literature curriculum is all about. And so we are going to be doing all 3 of our normal things that we usually do this week. It's just that you're only doing them in the capacity of revision and reading your work. Said all of this. So this week, in lieu of the typical writing assignments, you have 2 assignments that are still due by 5 p.m. on Friday: a reflection assignment to score your essay, and then an organization assignment, which is to revise your essay according to the feedback you're going to provide yourself and the feedback I provide you in the BGD. Only 1 lecture video and you're watching it now. Okay. All right. So to frame the work, this was our prompt. We're thinking about foils, character, contrasts, the way that characters exist in pairs. This is not something I generated, though I think it's a great question. I'm going to bring you over to our website and I'll show you where I got it. So if I'm on our AP Literature website, on the left here I've added 2 links. One is to the rubric, which you'll need today and probably from this point forward will want ready access to. And then this is past AP Lit questions and samples. So on the site, you can see all of the questions that are listed for each year. It goes back pretty far. And you can see the most recent ones, which are highlight and have scoring samples also. So I love the scoring samples. I think that that's really valuable just because they're a collection of exemplar work and then some non-exemplars. So you can really get in touch with better writing and how to constantly revise to get to that level. And I'll use that today. It's part of the assignment for revision. I want to point out something that happened, though, in 2019. And it's not something you need to know a lot about, but I want you to know the context of what we're walking into. Until 2019, AP Lit had a completely different kind of rubric. And I'll show you what it looks like briefly. In the old rubric, essays were scored from 1 to 9. And it was a holistic rubric, which meant it wasn't a tally of points. It was something that readers calibrated by simply looking at the whole essay and saying, okay, this is an 8, put that in the 8 pile. This one is a 4, put that in the 4 pile. So they moved away from this to move towards something that was more quantitative in nature. And I'm not making a comment on holistic rubrics versus numbered rubrics. I'm just pointing out the difference. And I want to give you a nice visual for that difference. So here, the old rubric, every essay graded until 2019 with these paragraph descriptions, and the highest level being in the 8s and the 9s. And then here, the new rubric, the one that your writing will be evaluated against, where it's point-driven, not paragraph-driven. And the highest you can earn is a 6 out of 6. And I'll show you exactly how. We're going to move down to the 3rd rubric because it's the one for our literary argument essay, and that's the one that you all have written for today. So there's 3 rows in the new rubric. Row A is the thesis row. It's worth 1 point. So you either earn the point or you don't earn the point for thesis. And it's all about whether or not your thesis is defensible in response to the prompt. Then there is row B. Row B is worth 4 points, and it's for evidence and commentary. So providing a sufficient line of reasoning and commentary with evidence for your argument. And then row C is sophistication. Sophistication in terms of your craft and how elegantly you make that point. All right, so what happened is they were really excited to roll out this new rubric in the fall of 2019. But then the pandemic happened in 2020 in the winter, and so that spring, as they were rolling out the rubric against all of the writing that year, they had a modified exam, everything had changed. So our most recent group of samples is from last year, 2021, but those aren't uploaded yet. We do have some 2020 models, it's just that they look different and they don't have the same kind of commentary that the old ones do. Now, that said, all of this is totally the same in so many ways. It's just a difference in how they score. But they're still looking for what they've always looked for, which is good thinking, sophisticated writing, and a clear path and a thesis. And so we're just going to stay the course and keep doing those things because good writing has been good writing before 2019. And yet, one of your assignment components today is to look at an old essay that was written on the Joy Luck Club, and you'll notice it got a score of 8. So, you're going to wonder what, and this is why. Okay, way more history than anyone really needs about the scoring guidelines at this time, but it's helpful, I think. So what I'll do now is I'll go through a really good essay that I received from a student that got a score of a 5. And I'm going to show you what it did so well, where it could have improved, and then show you at the very end again how I scored it the way that I did. And this will hopefully help you as you set off to score your own work. So here's that model. I'm going to show you, but I'm not going to read it, that this student included an outline in his, just so you can see what that can look like when it's done well. Clearly the outline here enabled him to have a really strong line of reasoning. And I think that that's true with outlines. If you have the time to generate something really quickly, that will help you know where you're going. All right, so let's read it. In the Joy Luck Club, Rich acts as a foil for the complicated relationship between Lindo and her daughter, Waverly. Their relationship is both strained at times and close, and this complexity is revealed through the way that Waverly tells Lindo that she is engaged. Already, I can say this student earns the thesis point. The thesis is the last sentence of the intro there. It's defensible. He's making a claim that the relationship is strained and sometimes close, and that is revealed through a particular moment in the book, which I imagine he will now go on to defend. So the thesis is clear enough that I can say with confidence as I look through the thesis components here, the thesis does provide a defensible interpretation in response to the prompts. Let's take a look here at the additional notes. It says the thesis might be more than one sentence. That's okay. His isn't, but it's good to know. The thesis might be anywhere within the response. Interesting, right? I've been coaching you to do it in the intro. I stand by that. I think it's a really good place to put it in terms of your line of reasoning, but do know that you can include it later, and we'll talk about that later in the course. It says for a thesis to be defensible, the selected work must include at least minimal evidence that could be used to support that thesis, but the student need not cite that evidence to earn the thesis point. Okay, what does that mean? Basically, it means that at this point in the argument, there has to be evidence, but the student doesn't have to include it right away. It doesn't have to be contained within the thesis. And that's similar to this last point, or second to last point. The thesis might establish a line of reasoning that structures the essay, but it doesn't have to. Do you remember how last week I talked about there were conceptual theses that didn't exactly give you yet the scenic view. That is an example of a thesis that doesn't have a line of reasoning but can still work nicely. And they're admitting that here in their rubric language doesn't have to have a line of reasoning. And then, this is interesting, the last bullet point says, a thesis that meets the criteria can be awarded the point whether or not the rest of the response successfully supports that line of reasoning. So what they're saying is you could get a point for your thesis and then no points for evidence and commentary. You don't want to do that, though, but they're acknowledging that that's what happens when you break out a rubric in this way. Okay, back to his essay. So first paragraph here, and now I'm really thinking about evidence and commentary. When they get engaged, Waverly avoids telling her mom, fearing judgment and criticism. Nice topic sentence. In a way, Waverly is purposefully putting up walls between herself and her mom because she fears what would happen if she opened up to her. Even when she decides to inform her mom of her engagement, she tries to do so indirectly by showing her they live together, talking about how good a person he is, but never actually saying it. This behavior is mirrored by Lindo. Whenever Waverly brings Rich up, she changes the subject, revealing her discomfort with talking openly with her daughter. All of this emphasizes the forced emotional distance between Waverly and Lindo by showing them purposefully withholding and avoiding personal conversation and connection with one another. Really nice paragraph to show the more negative aspects of their relationship. All right, the second paragraph here says it will be about the cultural distance between Waverly and Lindo. When Rich speaks to Lindo, it is clear he does not understand traditional Chinese custom and manners. This highlights the cultural distance between Lindo and Waverly because it shows Waverly to be American, not Chinese. That's really interesting. Lindo is a mother who fled an arranged marriage from China for the United States, and Waverly is a tax attorney married to a Caucasian man. So good evidence that this writer is providing for all of these statements. Later in the book, when they're eating crab at dinner, more evidence. Waverly, like Rich, is disgusted by eating a crab brain, even as Lindo assures them it's the most delicious part of the crab. Great evidence. To be clear, Rich does not encourage Waverly to turn away from her mother's culture. Rather, he is a living representation of the inevitable fact that she is not Chinese in the same way that her mother is Chinese. That's really good. I love the sophistication in that sentence, the two-part sentence that illustrates a really complicated point. The student is building nuance in his argument and showing that there are layers here that must be acknowledged. So it's really sufficient in that way. I am wondering at this point in the argument why the student hasn't brought up the fact that when Waverly reveals that she is engaged, her mom says, "Oh, I know. Seems like something that should come up, but maybe it's coming up in the next paragraph." All right. However, despite the emotional and cultural distance, both forced and inevitable, they are connected by a much stronger bond that makes this distance seem less daunting, the bond of family. No matter how much their differences and choices might push them apart, they're brought together because in the end, they're a family and they love each other. This is revealed through Rich's character when he's eating with Lindo. When he acts inappropriately, Waverly winces. Great evidence. She clearly cares so much about her mom's opinion of Rich, and that might explain why she hid him from Lindo for so long. She feared that her mom wouldn't like him. It becomes apparent the walls Waverly attempted to put between herself and her mom were not as strong as they might have seemed. She still hangs on to her mom's words, even as she resents them. Wonderful craft, wonderful nuance in the argument. She wants to know her mom's opinion of Rich and fears that Lindo will convince her she made the wrong decision in marrying him. And I'm still wondering why this would be another good moment to bring up that last important point that she does know, that her mom does know, and affirms it in a way. The fear and reverence that Waverly holds for her mom demonstrate Lindo has power she can only have if their relationship meant more to Waverly than she might believe. That is really good. I mean, I do love the evidence and commentary here because he's pointing out that there's a good side of this distance. It reveals just how connected that Waverly is to her mom. And then the conclusion, he set himself up so well for a good conclusion. Rich reveals the distance between Lindo and Waverly, but he also shows that distance to be superficial. The moment where she finds out that her mom always knew that they were engaged, that would be a great piece of evidence right here. In doing this, he not only acts as a foil to their relationship, but also makes a central theme of the book clear. Nice! Although the emotional, cultural, and generational distance between the mothers and the daughters is great, there's something else something stronger that ties them together. Nice craft there with the repeated phrase. This bond overcomes even the biggest differences and greatest misunderstandings, and it is the bond of family. Wow, that's a zinger. He slows it way down at the end, and he makes it a meaningful, impactful conclusion. All right, so I gave this a score of a 5, which is excellent in the AP Lit world. It gets the point for sophistication for sure. The sentences are beautifully crafted. There's lots of artful construction to make nuanced points more clear. The student feels in control of the argument all the way through. I give this the thesis point. I said that already. Evidence and commentary. I'm giving it a 3 out of 4. I think it's missing one really important piece of evidence, which is the climactic moment when Waverly learns that her mom knew all along they were engaged. It's not just a little thing, it's the climax of the whole vignette. That's the moment where they realize how much they actually understand each other. So it would be a little bit like a Lord of the Flies essay about Piggy that failed to acknowledge that Piggy was killed. It's just central. And so what I'm going to say is it falls here in this category. It uniformly offers awesome evidence to support claims. It focuses on specific details in a really fluid way. Its line of reasoning is so strong, but it does fail to integrate some evidence that is central to the key claim of how close they are and how much they understand each other. Still, though, a 5 is a great score. I mean, I give this an 8 in the old world, and that is fantastic. So what is your task? Well, I'm hoping this was enough, and it certainly was long, to get you close to the ability to score yourself. I do want you to read one more example, but read it yourself instead of me talking about it again, because it gets so long. It's right here. It's the first model from the AP Lit graders, and this is useful because you get to read what AP Lit graders wrote, so it's a nice corroboration of some of the rubric language. There's 3 responses. The first one is the Joy Luck Club, the second response is from the Color Purple, and the third response is from the Kite Runner. You're welcome to read those others, but if you didn't read the books, it won't be as necessary or important. I just want you to read the first one. And once you've done both of those things, listen to me, which you just did, and read that model, then click on this form. And this is your real assignment. I want you to evaluate your essay according to these questions, which is the rubric. Once you've done this, you're ready to move on to the organization assignment, which is revision. You'll see feedback from me in your BGDs, and then you'll know your own feedback because you'll have filled out the form, and you can work towards revising your Joy Luck Club essay according to those things. You're done with lectures for the week. This is the only one, and so if you have questions about revision, just reach out to me personally. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay, I look forward to seeing these essays.